Dhammapada. This is what we will talk about tonight. This is the Dhammapada, which most of you are familiar with. It is a set of very early Buddhist poems. There are 26, I think, all told. We're on number 11, so one a month. We've got over a year left, which is good, because I like them. So I will read this. It's about 3 pages. I'll read the poem, and then I'll read it more slowly with commentary, and then I'll push the buttons again, and we will talk without recording ourselves. This one, number 11, aging. Aging. What laughter, why joy when constantly aflame? Enveloped in darkness, don't you look for a lamp? Look at the beautified image, a heap of festering wounds shored up, ill but the object of many resolves, where there is nothing lasting or sure. Worn out is this body, a nest of diseases dissolving, this putrid conglomeration is bound to break up, for life is hemmed in with death. On seeing these bones discarded like gourds in the fall, pigeon grey, what delight! A city made of bones plastered over with flesh and blood, whose hidden treasures are pride and contempt, aging and death. Even royal chariots, well embellished, get run down, and so does the body succumb to old age. But the Dhamma of the good doesn't succumb to old age. The good let the civilized know. This unlisping man matures like an ox, his muscles develop, his discernment not. Through the round of many births I roamed without reward, without rest, seeking the house builder. Painful is birth again and again. House builder, you are seen. You will not build a house again. All your rafters broken, the ridgepole dismantled. Immersed in dismantling, the mind has attained to the end of craving. Neither living the chaste life nor gaining wealth in their youth, they waste away like old herons in a dried up lake depleted of fish. Neither living the chaste life nor gaining wealth in their youth, they lie around misfired from the bow, sighing over old times. Aging. So, in an important sense, if you go through the old Pali Canon, the original teachings, what Buddha was talking about was actually about illness, old age and death. When he had his, what do you call them, the four visitors, the four experiences where he met somebody, he left when he was a young man living in this privileged life in the palace. He leapt over the wall and he saw somebody who was sick, somebody who was old, somebody who was dead, and then he saw a mendicant. That was all about escaping that. It was all about living life in a way that we do not suffer as a result of this ever-present aging, this ever-present failing body that gets sick, and this ever-present knowledge that we're going to die. That's what he was teaching about. He was teaching about how to live a life where we don't suffer from that, and further, where we can become the unconditioned. We can realize we are the unconditioned, that we were never born, and so we will never die. That's what his teaching was actually about. So this is right in the middle of what he was, his whole life of teaching was about. And some of the ways it's described, they sound rather bleak, but what they're doing is they're calling our attention to the illusion that we live in. We think this is real, we think this is important, we think that we could look after this and live in this forever. The greatest mistake is taking that which is impermanent and thinking it's permanent, pretending it's permanent. And that's what we do with this body all the time. Most of the time, not consciously, but we train ourselves all the time to live in this body as if it's not going to change. And if when something goes wrong, Oh my goodness, why did this happen to me? Make this go away, make it better, right? So that's what this is about. Why laughter, why joy when constantly aflame? His third sermon was the fire sermon. Everything is aflame, everything's on fire. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. They're all on fire. What he's talking about is sensations we have when we touch, when we experience things. They lead to suffering. They lead to this thing, dukkha, distress, discontent, stress, dis-ease, unsatisfactoriness. They may feel momentarily pleasing, but that pleasing is going to come to an end. And that's going to be unsatisfactory. Can't sustain this. So why are we so caught up in trying to enjoy what we know is ephemeral? If we pause and look, we know it's ephemeral. And we know it's a flame that's just going to burn us. Enveloped in darkness, not shining the light on what's really going on. Don't you look for a lamp? Look at the beautified image, this body, this mind, a heap of festering wounds, shored up, ill, the object of many resolves. There's it recurs many times in the Pali Canon, examining the body from the soles of the feet on up, from the top of the head on down. This body full of unclean stuff, hair of the head, hair of the body, eyes, teeth, skin, nails. There's a list of 32 things. All the organs, bile, blood, urine, feces, small intestine, large intestine. If you look at what this is, it's a bunch of stuff. It's not very pretty. Doesn't mean we have to be revolted by it, but it's not what we delude ourselves into thinking. So calling attention to this. A heap of festering wounds, shored up ill, but the object of many resolves, where there is nothing lasting or sure. Keep on deciding we're going to do things with this. We're going to exercise, we're going to get fit, we're going to do all these wonderful things, but there's nothing that can last here. Worn out is this body, a nest of diseases, dissolving. This putrid conglomeration is bound to break up, for life is hemmed in with death. Two things are certain, right? Taxes and death. The only thing that's certain is death. But it's only certain as long as we think we're inhabiting this body, as long as we take this as what it's not. On seeing these bones discarded, like gourds in the fall, pigeon grey, what delight, a city made of bones, plastered over with flesh and blood, whose hidden treasures are pride and contempt, aging and death. A couple of core teachings. So the Satipatthana Sutta expands on this. The Satipatthana Sutta is the four foundations of mindfulness. Mindful of the body in the body, feelings in the feeling, mind in the mind, and the dharmas or fabrications or ideas in and of themselves. So just the body and the body. Mindful of the body. We see this body. When we're breathing, we see we're breathing. When we're walking, we see we're walking. When we're sitting down, we notice sitting down. Just paying attention. And noticing that this body is that list from the hair of the head, the top of the head on down, soles of the feet on up, that list. And then there was also a section in that where this body, going to a charnel ground, seeing it as a corpse. They used to go to monastics, renunciants, they used to go sit in charnel grounds, which are places where bodies were just left, corpses. Sometimes they burn them, sometimes they just leave the corpse, and the vultures would come down and pick it clean. So you'd be there. Ajahn Chah, who's a relatively contemporary monastic in Thailand, he writes in one of his books about the night he went to sat in a charnel ground, and it was just terrifying for him, because he thought he experienced spirits and they brought a body in, and he was a young person. But you're there with the bodies, and they're in all stages of decay. There's fresh ones, then there's when they're starting to decay and they get putrid and they start stinking, and then the flesh starts getting torn off, and then there's just the bones, and then the bones get bleached, and then the skeleton starts to fall apart, and there's a leg bone over there, and a shin bone, and an arm bone, and a few teeth over here, and a skull, and some toes, just bones scattered all over, and then they get bleached, and then they turn to dust. And it's just this recollection of seeing that's what happens to this body. And it's not, again, it's not to be bleak and dark about it, it's to call our attention to being caught up and taking this as permanent when it's just not. And if we see this clearly, if our attention is focused on this clearly, we start to release this. It's like, my favourite bowl of ice cream. I love ice cream. That tasted nice, but I want another one. It melted too soon. The tub's finished. There's all of these cravings that happen. Craving begets clinging. And in the same way that we can work on not being attached to a bowl of ice cream, we do the same, and by recognizing the impermanent nature of this body, we see its non-self nature, that I am actually not this body. That's the illusion we think is true. I am not this body. And so we start letting go of it and not being caught up in the stories. And that's freedom. That's the freedom that Buddha was teaching. The freedom of realizing I was never born. This isn't me. This thing I think of isn't me. Even royal chariots, well embellished, there's something else which I won't go about. Even royal chariots, well embellished, get run down, and so does the body succumb to old age. But the Dhamma of the good does not succumb to old age. The good, let the civilized know. The good being those who have mastered the Dhamma and want to help relieve the suffering, dukkha, of others. They will let others know. And let the civilized know, which is those who have ears to hear. Not everybody wants to hear this, but those who have ears to hear. This unlistening man matures like an ox, his muscles developed, his discernment not. And that's fairly self-explanatory. Through the round of many births I roamed, without reward, without rest, seeking the house builder. This is the house. What has built this house? Who has built this house? This place of suffering, wandering through many births. Buddha's teaching us of karma, right? Karma is action. Action has consequences, and action continues into the future. Consequences just continue. And until, as long as I think I'm a me, as long as there is a sense of identity here, this is going to create karma. It's going to have intention, it's going to have self-centeredness around its actions. And that's going to have consequences. And the most central consequence in this teaching is one of rebirth. So I'll describe it as it's taught. You don't have to believe it this way, but you can see that there's a truth in this, however you want to unpack it. The consequences of this action, if there are things done that are done to benefit this self, and they're going to harm others, that has a consequence. That negative karma continues. And it's a price that is borne here, ultimately. James Baldwin, the African-American author, civil rights author, lived in Paris much of his life actually, but he wrote somewhere along the way that the person who suffers most as a consequence of slavery is the slave owner. And what he meant by that was the slave owner, because of the way they behave and the way they relate to slaves, in order to relate to them the way they do, they have to dehumanize the slave. Enslaved person. See, that's already dehumanized them to call them a slave, the enslaved person. They have to dehumanize them. And in doing so, they dehumanize themselves. So our actions towards others have consequences here. And in this teaching, that consequence means that when this sack of bones falls away and shrivels up, the consciousness that resided here continues. And it continues in another organism. Maybe as a human, maybe as an animal, maybe as a ghost, maybe as a deva, God. So roam through many births without reward, just keeps on going. This is samsara, the wheel that keeps turning. Seeking the house builder. Painful is birth. Again and again and again. It just keeps going until we figure out how to escape. But Buddha escaped. He woke up. He saw the truth. Became self-realized. House builder, you are seen. You will not build a house again. All your rafters broken, the ridgepole dismantled. Immersed in dismantling, the mind has attained to the end of craving. These two verses, through the round of many births I roamed on through house builder, attain the end of craving. These are supposedly the first verses the Buddha stated after he woke under the Bodhi tree. House builder, you will see. You will never build this house again. The house builder is craving. That's what we build this suffering, this thing out of. If you think about it, there's a body here, but what causes us to take ownership of this body? It's my body. My fingers, I like the way they feel when they do this. I see all these people, I like the way that seeing happens. I don't like this seeing, but I like this seeing. This is some sense of attachment to what's going on in this body. It's this attachment, it's this craving that causes the fabrication and creation of this identity, of this self. Once we recognize that it is craving that does that, we can open the hand and let go of that craving. And we can recognize that there's no me seeing, there's just seeing. It's just seeing. There's no you hearing here. There's just hearing. It's just the pure sensory experience of hearing. Everything else you add. We add. And build it into the story where we add seeing and hearing and smelling to our ideas, and we build this thing we think of as a me. It's not. The just seeing and the just hearing and the just thinking, these can be really useful to help us end suffering here and to help us end suffering out there. This subjective experience can be really, really powerful, is really, really powerful. But we don't need to have a subject sitting in the middle of this subjective experience. That's something we add, it's something we make up. To see that is to see the consequences, to see the house, to see how that happens, how this craving becomes clinging, becomes this fabrication. That's seeing the house builder. And once we see the house builder, we can let go of the whole thing and be free, completely free. Neither living the chaste life nor gaining wealth in their youth. Living the chaste life, Buddha's core teaching after he woke up was the middle way. Avoiding these two extremes, the stream of self-indulgence, self-gratification, self-mortification. Alternatively, existence, non-existence, becoming, non-becoming, birth, unborn. These are all ways of bringing something into being, rejecting something. Didn't do either of those. Stayed in the middle. Whatever happens, happens. Don't get attached to it. So living the chaste life is the ascetic life. It's a life of extreme renunciation. It's the life of self-mortification, thinking we can control this body into releasing the soul. It doesn't work. The other extreme, gaining wealth, living a life of self-indulgence, thinking we can make ourselves so happy, life will be wonderful. That doesn't work either. So these are the two extremes, avoiding these two extremes. So neither living the chaste life nor gaining wealth in the youth, they waste away like old herons in a dried up lake, depleted of fish. Buddha taught, one of his teachings, he saw there was a puddle, it had been, there's a river, and we'd been going into the dry season and the river was drying up, so it's forming little puddles. And he saw these fish in this puddle. It was getting smaller and smaller. And the fish were getting more and more desperate and splashing around. as their water dried up, and he thought, that's us. That's what our life is like. They waste away like old herons in a dried up lake depleted of fish. Neither living the chaste life, nor gaining wealth in their youth. They lie around, misfired from the bow. The true bow used well fires true and straight, right at the target. Target is liberation. Target is freedom. Target is seeing through this illusion. In the Chan tradition leading to the Zen tradition, there's a poem which talks about two arrows meeting in midair. This shows up in a lot of poems in those traditions too. Accurate firing of the arrows, it's so precise. And in the Pali Canon, there's training yourself. You get the target, you shoot at the target, you move the target further and further away. This idea of shooting arrows and shooting accurately is, in this, in our ancient culture, is a good way of looking at how we focus our practice. They lie around, misfired from the bow, sighing over old times. All right, let me stop recording.